How's
There
that?
we go. Yeah, that works.
Got it? Okay, is my laser pointer showing up?
It is. It is.
Okay. So good. So now we can get started. So as I said before, I'm going to zoom us out once again. I'm going to talk in a little bit more generalities. Before we get started, I'll just set some expectations for this presentation. This presentation is a portion of a larger presentation that discusses the three major types of project delivery methods that CDOT uses. I know this conference is mainly focused on CMGC and progressive design build. But in Colorado, we feel it's important to understand why you would choose one method over another. And this presentation hits on the fundamentals that distinguish each method. We at CDOT feel that looking at individual methods can sometimes generate subtleties in conversation that can confuse folks. However, when we have the opportunity to look at each delivery method with the backdrop of the others, it helps us understand the benefits of the individual delivery methods and also some of the risks associated with the individual delivery methods. So the takeaway is that some of this may seem like review, but our ultimate goal is to understand CMGC much better. Oops. So at CDOT, we have three major types of project delivery that we use currently. Let's start with the basics. We have design bid build. It's our traditional method of project delivery, one that we have used for hundreds of years. It's characterized by several key factors. It progresses in a very linear manner. It requires two separate contracts. One contract between the owner and the design consultant to complete the design phase, and another contract between the owner and the contractor to complete construction. The contractor is selected based off of lowest responsible bid. One exception to this is when the owner designs the project in-house, then there will be only one contract between the owner and the contractor, since the owner and the designer are one entity. Moving on to CMGC, we have, which stands for Contract Manager, General Contractor. This delivery method is characterized by the following key factors as well. Similar to design bid build, this method requires two separate contracts, one with the design consultant and another with a contractor for CM services during design. The CM provides, as part of that CM services, real-time constructability review. As mentioned before, it's real-time pricing as well. Provides consultation to the team on potential packaging of the construction, and also input on schedule and risk. The selection of the CM is qualifications based, ensuring that we are getting a highly qualified contractor that has the skills to be successful on our specific project, including some specialty skills such as tunneling, electrical, and fire suppression. The scope of a CMGC project at this point when we hire the CM is not defined. When we bring that CM on board, we do not have a definition of scope. We have a vision, essentially. It is up to the owner to foster a culture of creativity and collaboration to complete the definition of the scope. This is a key consideration and why this delivery method is good at delivering projects where the outcome of a project is well defined, but the details are still to be determined. The CMGC process is great at handling projects where the construction start is a higher priority than the construction completion date. Procuring long lead time items is another area where CMGC shines, such as traffic signal equipment or prefabricated steel structures. And also CMGC is great at handling fluctuating funding sources, especially when we get these quick influxes of cash that have deadlines associated with their spending. We can immediately enter into design with our CM on board, and then we can try to develop a package that would accommodate the scope associated with that funding. It's important to note that the initial procurement for a CMGC is a professional services contract, and it is for project development or design only. The CM is in no way guaranteed any of the GC contracts that come out of the project development phase. Only if the owner and the GC are able to successfully negotiate a construction agreed upon price will the general contractor or the GC will the CM become the general contractor or the GC? If we are unable to successfully negotiate a cap, then the owner will break that package off and advertise it on the open market. This is an important point because if at any point we infer or otherwise guarantee any of the GC packages to the CM, then we are not negotiating in good faith. And in fact, we are actually colluding with our contractor. And if federal funding is involved in your contract, then collusion is a felony. All the FBI would need to determine is if a quid pro quo occurred. This is also why we do not use change orders to add scope on CMGC contracts as well. Moving into design build, which we're all familiar with. Finally, this delivery method relies upon a single procurement to hire both the designer and the contractor by utilizing a single contract with the design build team to both design and construct a project. The risks that the owner bears in a traditional project procurement can be mitigated. Some advantages of this delivery method are first phase of selection is qualification based, allowing the owner to ensure competition from the most highly qualified contractors. The process encourages innovation and efficiency through a competitive procurement process that challenges contractors to add value to the project. And final selection is based off of best value as determined at the owner's sole discretion. Contractor owns the critical path and usually requires a higher level of project intensity. The owner must be able to match the contractor's production rates with review times and clearances to ensure that the critical path remains free from obstacles. Projects must have a good definition of scope to be accomplished, but the design details are not necessary. We have to know exactly what we want to accomplish with this project, and we can't be overly flexible with that scope. We have to make sure that once we engage in a contract with a contractor for a design build, that scope stays set. We don't want to creep our own scope, or we don't want to incur additional costs associated with processing change orders. This also relies upon current specification and performance-based requirements to achieve the project goals, and adding scope after award of a design build contract can be problematic. So now let's look at how risk is distributed with each of the delivery methods. We saw a graph similar to this, much more graphic. The graph earlier looked a lot nicer than my graph, but you can see that the results are the same. So in design bid build, you can see if we're talking about what are the risks that the owner carries and what are the risks that the contractor carries, you can see for design bid build, the owner takes the responsibility for the majority of the risks. In design build, we are either transferring or assigning additional risks to the design build team because the design build team is ultimately responsible for the completion of the design and the completion of the construction and the critical path to accomplish both processes. CMGC is more of a risk sharing process. The contractor, designer, and owner are all partnering together to develop an agreed upon scope of the project. And in that, they have the ability to utilize risk pools to mitigate or quantify certain aspects of the project. The contractor also has the insight into the decision-making process and can mine efficiencies for schedule and cost to optimize the execution of the project. It's important for us to understand that these graphs currently are qualitative, although Dr. Molinar does have some quantitative graphs that reflect the same percentages. But today we're using these graphs for illustration purposes. Now let's talk about the level of collaboration that we can expect with some of the delivery methods. This should shed some light on why a contractor would consider taking on the additional risk associated with an alternative delivery project. When a contractor can participate in the development of the scope, then the veil of uncertainty can be lifted. They can participate in the investigation and contribute in the quantification of the scope. They can understand the expectations and the assumptions that are included with the scope. And this results in a contractor having a fuller understanding of the risk of the project in the case of CMGC, and a more complete understanding in the case of a design build project. One other consideration as we think about this, the owner is not just offloading risk, we are assigning risk in an educated fashion. The owner is keeping the risks that it is best suited at handling, and asking a contractor, designer, or a design build team to take on risks that they are best suited at handling. So in this graphic, you can see that on a design bid build, the contractor has the least amount of collaboration opportunities. On a design build, they have the most because they are responsible not only for the development of the project, but also the construction of the project. And then on a CMGC, it's right in the middle there, where they have just enough collaboration opportunity to be able to understand the project more intimately. So now that we've been introduced to the topic of risk, let's get specific about what we're talking about. To be able to understand what risks are being allocated, we must first understand the foundation of all change orders. There's a US Supreme Court case that took place in 1918 that provides the foundation of all contractor proposed change orders, the United States versus Spearin. The essence of the Spearin doctrine states, an owner that advertises a project for construction warrants the contract documents, which is the plans, specifications, and the bid schedule, against erroneous and omitted information. By changing the relationship between the designer and the contractor, the owner is able to mitigate the risk for error and omission and assign it to the party that is best able to handle it. Risk does not only manifest in the form of a negative impact, it also provides opportunity when properly allocated. So continuing to develop this precept, this contracting method CMGC includes a method of risk sharing and risk transfer. The competitive procurement process encourages innovation and risk taking. Risks are assigned to the party, the owner or contractor that is best equipped to manage. And an example of risks an owner is best equipped to manage are things such as right-of-way, FHWA approval, statutory clearances, third-party coordination, and insurance. Risks the contractor is best equipped to handle include schedule, quality, commodity escalation, quantity uncertainty, errors, and omissions. On a design build, the Spearin doctrine does not apply because the designer and the contractor are the same entity. So what metrics can we use to measure effectiveness of alternative delivery? Alternative delivery should ultimately reduce the amount of contractor proposed change orders on a project, which means that you will have cost certainty that can be established earlier. You will also be able to establish schedule certainty much earlier than on a traditionally delivered project. So now getting into the individuals, let's talk a little bit about design bid build. As we saw from our graph earlier, this contracting method is the highest risk to the owner, requires the scope to be independently interpreted 3 times. The scope is first interpreted by the designer. They're trying to ensure all the work is captured in their plans, tabulations, and specifications that then boil down to common pay items. The second interpretation comes from the engineer's estimator. They'll take an independent look at the plans, tabulations, and specifications. They'll pore through the documents and try to put pricing that includes labor, materials, overhead, and profit, and make it fit into your bid schedule. The third interpretation then comes from the market side when the contractors take your plans and specifications and independently price the bid schedule and hope to be the low bidder. This exercise has many opportunities for miscommunication and can result in misinterpretation of what the work is. This has been compared to 3 people with a blindfold touching a different part of an elephant and then trying to determine what animal it is. Additionally, design is completed to a standard of care. Because designers design to what is commonly known as a standard of care, there's an immediate admission that the plans are not intended to be perfect. Designers are not omniscient or omnipotent, and a level of inaccuracy is to be expected. Therefore, a designer is not required to warrant their work to be free from defects. Because of the Spearn doctrine, the owner is required to warrant the contract against erroneous and omitted information. The concept of standard of care and the concept of Spearn doctrine clash and create what is commonly known as the Spearn gap. The owner warrants the plans to be free from error and omission, and the designer does not warrant the plans to be free from error and omission within a standard of care. Some considerations and keys to success for design bid build is that there's a large pool of expertise to draw upon for managing scope, schedule, and budget. Contractor competition is the greatest of all the delivery methods. This method has the largest population of contractors that can compete for the work. Market will also determine the pricing. Executive management also has a firm grip on this delivery method. There's a lot of experience with this delivery method, and it's like our favorite blanket. Always familiar, always comfortable, and very reliable, almost predictable. Now moving into CMGC. As already mentioned, CMGC is a method of risk sharing. The contractor is integrated into the design development team. Ongoing constructability reviews are a way for the contractor to assist in adequate scope definition. This is done through a professional services contract. As part of the CM contract, the contractor agrees to provide assistance in identifying opportunities for early mobilizations, efficient packaging, and procurement of long lead time items. They can also provide opinions on project estimating and scheduling. Owner, contractor, and designer can develop shared risk pools to account for quantity uncertainty and the potential for unknown condition. These risk pools can be used like force accounts. If the risk manifests and the team agrees that it is not due to error and omission, then the risk pool resource can be tapped to get the project back on track. If the risk pool goes unutilized, then the team can agree to share the remnant budget in the risk pool, or the owner can just take it back and reprogram it. Contractor manages risks such as escalation, commodity fluctuations. They can give us the feedback immediately as to pricing, especially when it comes to escalation and commodity fluctuations, like if the price of concrete powder fluctuates greatly, that can affect our scope. A contractor that has his finger on the pulse of the market would be able to give us that feedback on a CMGC. Some considerations and keys to success on a CMGC. The CM contract and the GC contract should be divorced and independent of each other. The CM is a professional services contract, as we've mentioned several times before, and the award of a GC contract is dependent on the successful negotiation of a construction agreed upon price, or a CAP, as it is commonly referenced. If we are unable to successfully negotiate a CAP, the owner will advertise the package out for bid, and the CM cannot compete for the project. Open buy schedule constraints can weaken the owner in negotiations, and we'll look at that a little more as we get into how each delivery method progresses. If we are constrained by an open date, then negotiating our last package when negotiating our last package, we've put ourselves in a position that compels us to be successful in that negotiation, which means we have lost the leverage of putting that package out for advertisement. One thing about CMGC is that construction starts earlier, but the finish can drag on. We will look at this in more detail as well as we talk about the progression of each delivery type. CMGCs work really well with projects where the scope is difficult to define. A good example would be a tunnel. In Colorado, we all know what a tunnel is. It's a big hole through a rock. However, when we decide to put a transportation facility through that hole, there are a considerable amount of details that we would need to include in the scope to make our tunnel successful, such as ventilation, laneage, lighting, ITS, etc. Having the cost estimating expertise of the CM and the construction expertise gives the owner better insight in the development of the scope and allows the owner to weigh options with better information. Now moving into design build. as we transition, this contracting method includes a method of risk sharing and risk transfer. Competitive procurement process encourages innovation and risk taking. Shortlisting allows us to use qualifications to ensure that our competition is between the most highly qualified in the industry. And it is through the use of alternative technical concepts that we get the opportunity to spend our taxpayer investment in a much more efficient manner. Additionally, requested elements also allow owners to maximize scope for the guaranteed maximum price, or sometimes referred to as lump sum price or upset pricing. In design build, risks are assigned to the party, the owner or the contractor that is best equipped to manage. And as previously mentioned, examples of risks that the owner is best equipped to handle are right-of-way, FHWA approvals, third-party coordination, and insurance. Risks the contractor is often best equipped to handle include schedule, quality, commodity, and escalation, quantity uncertainty, and errors and omission. Once again, Spear doctrine does not apply to design build. Some of the keys, considerations and keys to success: the scope of a design build project is the technical requirements. It is not measured in cubic yards or linear feet. It is measured in conformance or non-conformance to the contract. Project intensity of a design build requires dedicated resources to ensure the critical path remains clear. This is where most of our recent challenges in Colorado have come with design build, is that these projects have not been given the priority that they need to be successful. Time is of the essence, as it is in every contract, and the contractor owns the critical path. And what that means for the owner is that the commitments in the contract the owner is responsible for, such as the risks we choose to keep in-house, have to be met in order for the contractor to be able to successfully navigate the critical path. The contract protects both parties in a design build, the owner and the contractor. Another key to success is that the partnering on a design build needs to be more than a platitude. Owner, designer, contractor need to be united in the pursuit of the project goals. This contracting method cannot be hindered by the adversarial relationship that characterizes design bid build. The only owner truly has to partner with the design build team and has to provide guidance and leadership to the team so that the team does not have to guess at expectations. On that same vein, the culture of no needs to be supplanted by how can we make this work? We have to listen to our contractors when they are communicating issues. There are no owner problems, no contractor problems. There are only project problems. We cannot immediately suspect the contractor's intentions when they are presenting an issue or idea. Once again, we need to listen. Design build also is not an excuse to compromise safety, ethics, or quality. These projects are intense and they develop momentum like a freight train. However, it is important to keep these project values at the forefront. These values need to be included as part of the work, not to be considered in spite of the work. Now let's look at the progression of each delivery method. And this is where we're going to get into really what some of the benefits of CMGC are.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Hey, you know, considering the time, we've got 5 minutes till 3 here. We may not have the time to really get much into detail.
Okay.
So
how about I just, since I only got 5 minutes, how about I just quickly cover the CMGC, or you just want me to?
Well, we do have one other presenter also.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
That's all right.
Okay. I'll be more than happy to take some calls, or if anybody wants to talk more about this or get more into the progression of the delivery methods.
Yes, sir.
I think really when you get into that progression is really where you start to see the differences between the delivery methods. But please contact me if you have any further questions or comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And you know, sorry we're a little behind here. Anath, are you fine? Or moving ahead with the last presentation?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get the last one in, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
And Matthew, sorry to close you short there, but
Yeah.
just run a little bit behind schedule. So let me get Ben up.